When you get that new plugin and you're like, that's the one. Well, I got one for you. Check it out. So this new plugin is called MaterialComp, and it's from a company called VoosteQ. And when I first demoed this plugin, it was version 1.0, and I gave my opinion on what I thought the plugin did well and what it could do better. And since then, they've actually updated the plugin. I have version 1.0.3, but as of today, they actually brought out a new version. Unfortunately, I've already made this video, but go check out 1.0.5. And they are really stepping it up in adding those features that customers like to see and use on a daily. So let's check it out. So let's start at the top left. Select the MaterialComp name or the icon right next to it. The first thing is the documentation. If you select that, the manual will pop up. I know, we never read the manual, but it is some great information inside. I advise you check it out. Next is their website, www.VoosteQ.com. If you select that, it'll take you to their website. Next thing down below is activation. You put in the serial number and you're good to go. And right below that, as you can see, is the version number. I have version 1.0.3E. And with Pro Tools 11 HD, it's been working flawless. And also with Logic Pro X that I use for my music, and it's been working great. So to the left below that is the knob and slider weight. For light, makes the knobs a little bit more loose. And for heavy, that makes the knobs a little bit more slower when turning them. Next to that, on your right, is the meter and graph scale. -60 lets you monitor all the way down to -60 dB. And if you're like me, I don't need to go that low. I just need to see -10 and above. But it's great to have that option. To the right of that is the hide material selection, a single click or a double click. Now what this means is, if you select on comp mode and you want to use modern, well, you can either select single click where you click it once and it pops up, or double click and it takes 2 clicks to pop up. I hope that makes sense. I actually like single click, but I also like options, so I'm glad they added both. And of course, if you look to the right of that, you see reset, and it just puts all your settings back to the original way that it came. So kind of like a default setting. All right, so let's get out of this and move on to the next. I love seeing this in plugins now, an undo and redo. This is so important because you can set up the compression and you really like it, but then you may move one button or one slider or move the input a little bit, just by mistake, of course. You can always undo that. But let's just say you love that mistake. Well, you can always change it back by the redo. I'm so glad they added this. Well, moving on, let's go to the presets. As you can see, they have a lot of factory presets, from acoustic American vintage, acoustic natural focus, everything from bass to drums, guitar, your master, mix bus, piano strings, synth, and vocals. And of course, you can make your own user presets. As you can see, I have a few myself. I have some great starting off points, and I'll share them with VoosteQ so you can take advantage of them. All right, next is your A and B. Now, you can set up something that you really like. Let's say you like the comp mode of modern, you like the preamp of harmonic, you want the N type for analog flavor, and you want to try the S console for the glue. Well, you can save that on A and then select B and try something totally different and go back and forth between each one to see which one you like better. It's a great option, check it out. Next, you have copy and save. Now these may be self-explanatory, but I'll go through them anyway. Say for instance, you got a setting on A. Well, you can hit copy, and when you select B, it'll actually paste it on B automatically. And then you can start changing it any way you want. So when you hit A and B, you can go back and forth. Now, when you select save, it's gonna ask you to save a patch name. This, of course, is gonna save it into your user presets. So you just type in whatever name and hit save. And now, when you look into your user folder, you'll see that preset pull up at the bottom. All right, so let's move down to the graph section. This is where you'll see the waveform slowly go by. You can color grade it by just selecting on the top left, and waveform color will pop up and reduction color will pop up, and then a reset underneath that. That just means that you can color the waveform and also put into a different color the actual reduction of the compression and what it's doing to the actual waveform. So you can clearly see what the plugin is doing. It's very cool, check it out. Now, let's move on to the right where you see the meters, and there's two arrows, one for the input and one for the output. And just below that, you can see the peak meters, as well as in the middle, in the pink, you can see the reduction meter. Now the input, it's very important, and I'll show that later in an audio video. But with this input, you can drive each mode from comp mode or the Preamp Spice and so on. Now, let's go a little bit down and to the left, and you'll see knee, peak, /RMS, range, noise, and SC filter or sidechain filter. Now at the end of that, you'll see an icon filter. I'll explain that a little later. Now let's go back to the left on the knee. Now, if you're not sure what a knee is, it's pretty much a curve, a compression curve. And you can go from hard to soft. I suggest you play around with it. I don't want to go into too much detail what a knee is or what it does, so just look it up. You're on YouTube, you got this. Now, with peak and RMS, I know that the SSL Duende plugin has the same functionality, and I love that you can compress by the peak level or the RMS level, but this takes it a little bit further. So think of it like this. Compression by the peak level is a little bit more faster, more harder, more tension, where compressing by the RMS level is a little bit more smooth, a smoother compression. But what I really like about this is you can actually move between both of them, so you can get a totally different sound. I absolutely love that option, and I'm so glad they did this. Now, let's look at range. Usually, you see range on expanders or gates, because what it's doing is listening to how much of the audio do you want to compress. It's kind of like a pre-threshold for the compressor. If you put it on -1, well, whatever hits within that -1 threshold, it will compress that. If you put it on -60, well, it'll go all the way down to -60 and try to compress that full range of audio. I hope that makes sense. I'll try to go over it in the audio video. Now, to your right, they have noise. Now this noise is from console noise, and they don't specifically say what console, but you can kind of guess what console it is because it's a British console, so I'm guessing SSL-ish. So what we have next is the sidechain filter or the SC filter. And what you can do with this is tell the compressor what not to listen to. So you can set it to off or move it to the right to the frequencies you want to compress. Now what's cool about this functionality is if you look to the right of it, if you select those headphones, it'll actually let you listen to the sidechain filter only. And so this way, you can set it to what you want the compressor to listen to. If it's pumping too much in the low end, well then you may want to move it to the right, maybe around 110, or maybe even up a little further, just depending on your audio. You should check it out. So let's move on. Let's go down to the compressor section. This functionality is pretty self-explanatory. You have your threshold, ratio, attack, and release. It's pretty much what all compressors have, unless you're dealing with the LA2A or 3A or Fairchild, may differ. Now next to that is a special section. Punch attacks the transients. So it's kind of like a transient designer. And groove is kind of like the sustain. And so messing with those can change how the compression reacts. Punch gives it a low mid punch. Groove kind of adds to the release, gives it a different feel. You should check it out. An imager, of course, makes it wider, brings it outside the speakers a little bit. This would be great for like backgrounds, synths, effects, something you want to push out the speakers a little bit. Now, to the right of that, you have auto gain, feedback, MS mode or mid-side mode, stereo link, and oversampling. And then you have a mix knob and an on and off switch between the mix and master names. Now, let's go back up to auto gain. So what it's doing, it's taking the signal that's coming in and trying to match that with all the processing that you're doing within the plugin. And so whatever you do within the plugin, it'll take the output and try to match the level, so you're not fooled by the louder processing chain. Next is feedback. Feedback comes from a feedback compressor or compression. API was very known for it. So what MaterialComp, it really is a feed-forward compressor. What the feedback compressor does, it takes the compressed signal and feeds it back into the plugin to get a more aggressive sound or a more compressed sound. Do your homework on that between feed-forward and feedback compressors. Now, MS mode, when selecting this, it changes the feel of the compressor, meaning that the compressor will automatically separate the mid and sides and compress it differently. I'll go more into that later. Now let's go down to stereo link. This is a cool functionality. If you select stereo link, what this does, if you have a balanced mix, well, this will give you a nice feel or a nice glue factor, bringing all the sounds together and compressing both the left and right to be cohesive, to be as one. The only problem with this is if you have an uneven mix or you have an uneven track. Say for instance, you have a kick track that is a true stereo kick track and one side is louder than the other. Well, with stereo link on, it's going to try to even those two out. Or if the left channel is louder than the right, it's going to try to match those two. And sometimes that's not good because sometimes it'll come off as over-compressing because it's trying to level out that loud left channel to match the right. So in that case, you want to unlink stereo link. So now it's acting as two separate compressors, one for the left and one for the right. Hope that makes sense. Now below that is oversampling. It doesn't say how much it oversamples, but a basic rule, if we just took it as a 2-time oversampling, that means it would turn this plugin, if I'm using it at 48K, which I'm doing in this session, it would put it up to 96. Now what this really does is help with something called aliasing. And I'm sure some people have been hearing a lot about it. It's kind of one of those things where with analog, there was hiss. It's kind of like a negative to analog. With hiss, it can go all the way up to 60 to 50 dB. Well, with digital, there's aliasing. Aliasing comes from saturation plugins, comes from compressor plugins, or any plugin that goes past the Nyquist theory. Believe me, I'm not going into that. Do your research, but to be honest with you, I never use oversampling. I never have a problem with it. I've never had a problem with aliasing, but do your homework. And if you feel that it makes a difference for you, then by all means, use it. At least we have that option. Also, I'll link a video down below that goes really deep into it. It's a great video. Think you should check it out if you're interested in it. Okay, moving on. We have the mix knob. Of course, it goes from 100% all the way to the dry signal. This is great if you want to really push the compression, mess with the imager, the punch and the groove, and then dial back some of the dry signal. Now it's called parallel compression. Back in the day, it used to be called New York compression. Mess with it, see what you come up with. Now, let's move on. The comp mode. We have Modern, 60 FET, Lux VCA, Studio Master, Opto, and Tube. Modern is just a modern sound compressor. The 60 FET, you can almost guess that's probably a Blue Stripe 1176. The Lux VCA, I don't know what that is. I even asked the company and they just said it was a new VCA. They didn't want to give me the name, which is fine. So I'll take a stab at it. It's probably the Avalon AD2044, or it's the Shadow Hills Master Compressor, or maybe the Tiegler Mag 2 Comp. They mentioned that it's a very high-end new compressor. So let me know what you think it is. Studio Master, it's like your Stereo Master compressor, like the SSL bus compressor. Opto, it's like your LA2A compressor. Tube is tube-based, like Fairchild, Gates. That one has saturation. It's one of the ones that I mostly use. It sounds really nice and plush. You should check it out. All right, let's move on to the Preamp Spice. Let's start with a harmonic. It's kind of like a smooth saturation. Doesn't sound great when it's not pushed. So I would suggest highly to push it. Push it by the input. Try bypassing the comp mode and just pushing the harmonic mode. It sounds incredible when you push it. Has that fuzzy top. I'll give you a tip on this one. Use the input, bypass the compressor mode first, hit the preamp. Hit it to where you kind of distort it a little bit. Maybe back it off a little bit, and then go back to the comp mode and start messing with the compressor. It's really gonna smooth it out and give it a really, really nice feel. Check it out. Next is analog. It just thickens up the sound of it. So once you come off the compressor mode with whatever compressor you use, this is really nice to thicken it back up. I mostly use it in analog. Sounds really, really nice. Next is smoggy. This is the sound of an original preamp from the 60s. Hint, hint, Nevish. Next is retro tape. It's more of a filtered sound, like a 15 IPS type tape sound with a low mid bump. Sounds interesting. Next is a Class A hot. Think Avalon 737 or the Manley Vox Box or something like that. Next is a Class A cool. So think about more of a Neve 1073 or like a Chandler Limited Germanium or a Dakin Mic Pre. Something like that, more solid state. And with the Class A hot, think more tube-ish. All right, let's move on. Analog flavor. Let's start with the rich buffer. This one is a $300,000 board. This one has a Neve-ish quality, but without the low bump. The next one, the N-type, well, of course, we all know what that is. That's a Neve-ish with that low-end bump. S-type has that SSL console feel. USA M console is an American console, so I'm guessing it's probably the API console. Next is the British Green. I'm gonna wildly guess that it's probably a Joe Meek style compressor. I love those compressors. Next is a cheap console. Think American. Think Mackie or Behringer, just to name a few. Next is the 60 Surf. Now this one, it's kind of weird sounding. It's a lo-fi field console, a la vintage style. I don't use it a lot, but I can see if I'm gonna do a lo-fi type track, this will be perfect for it. Last is the Analog Plus. This one is an analog ambience when passed through an audio cable only. It's a totally different sound. I would probably use this as an effect. All right, Let's go to Glue Magic. The S console. Well, we can all guess what that is. It's an SSL-ish master bus console. The center section, the meat and potatoes of the actual console. Next, aggressive pumping. This one kind of adds low, mid, and high end aggressively. Think more dance records, more high energy, 4 on the floor. Next is Pop Tune. This one has more brightness on the sides. Just feels like a pop console, like a high-end SSL-ish type console. Sounds really good. Next is D-Bass. It sounds like it adds like low-end harmonics. It kind of gives it that low-end sub feel. So check it out. Run some audio through it. Run some drum loops through it. Run your bass through it. It sounds really, really good. I like it. So now with the Preamp Spice and the Glue Magic, as you can see, they both have mix knobs. Now, how I use it, to be honest with you, is I'll give you a tip here. Okay, so like I said before, bypass the comp mode or just put it on modern. It won't give you no saturation or any like harmonics or anything like that. Push the input into the preamp. Let it kind of like distort and then bring it back just a little bit where it's kind of like in that saturation distortion mode. Then bring back your comp mode. And then, you know, you can leave it in modern or something just like Lux or something like that. Then mess with the mix knob. I usually find myself putting it back to 40%, like all the time, or like around 30% or 50%. I never use it at 100%, but it really does give you like a fullness of it, or it gives you that loudness factor too as well. So I really like that. Now, I'll drive that into the analog flavor, or sometimes I'll even bypass that. Then I go to the Glue Magic. Now, sometimes I'll use it, sometimes I won't. I'll just put the mix knob on 0. But when I do use it, usually use it on S console, and I'll do the same thing, like the 40% rule. So I'll just put it on 40%. I'll mess with it, go to 30 or maybe 50%, but it's rare that I use it at 100%. And when I do use it at 100%, it's usually because I try to offset the end type. Because sometimes I'll use that just to get that low end bump. But then the S console right after that to kind of even that out and kind of push that. So just try anything, like see what works for you. What I'm doing or what I do or what I say is just trying to give you ideas to push you forward or to push you to make different decisions that you would not normally do. I think that's what drives me is when I get new plugins or when I get these plugins or these plugin companies reach out to me and say, hey, I want you to try this new plugin because this is a great idea. And I look at it, I go, oh, wow, this is something new that I can add to my palette of colors or compression. I'm really into saturation, really into compression. That gets me hype, that gets me excited. I'm into like analog EQs, analog saturation, just like that gets me going. So I hope this gets you going. I hope it gets you thinking different and try it out. Try out the plugin. Let me know what you think about the plugin. Let me know what they can improve on. I'll tell you right off the bat what I think, how this plugin can go to the next level. 1, I think if this plugin had pop-ups on exactly what each knob does, I think that would actually help with the implementation of somebody using the plugin. You know, it wouldn't stop their workflow to read the manual. They could just use the pop-ups or using these type of names or anything that's not so familiar with compression or like special sections, or for somebody that's never used a desk before. Sure, you got the manual, but those pop-ups really do help, and I always get that feedback. So I think that's 1. 2, if you go into the presets and if you look by user and you see 3 lines. If you click on that, it says parameter lock. This is a great idea. And I think that if you add that to the knobs itself, like right click it or maybe hold control, click on the actual knob to lock it. So when you use a different preset, that preset or that lock doesn't move that knob. So if you set your threshold or you set it to the preamp to a certain preamp, but you want to try different flavors or different presets, that it doesn't change whatever you lock, I think that would add that next level feel to this plugin. 3, the graph section. I like it, but if you can hide it, then you can just focus on not looking at that screen and just more focus on the knobs. Though I love the meters and I love the input and output feel of it, maybe hiding that graphic and then maybe turning the meters to go left and right and using the input and output like that. That's just something that I thought would be really cool. 4, embellishing the MS mode. Giving more control to that. So say for instance, the input could stay the input, but the output, when hitting MS mode, maybe it within the reduction meter, maybe another output arrow appears when you hit MS mode, and that would control your mid, and then the other output arrow going facing towards left would be your sides. And so you could actually manipulate the mid and side. I think that'll be really dope. So hope they think about that one. 5, I absolutely love the fact that they have compressor mode, preamp, analog, and magic within the same plugin. Not a lot of plugins do it. Not only that, but the CPU is super low. So I really, really appreciate that. But what if you actually were able to change and say you want the preamp section first, then the compressor mode, and then the glue, and then the analog flavor, or you want to switch them around, that would take it to a whole nother level and a whole different type of sound set. And just being creative, you know, it'd be unlimited of what you could do. So I really think that could take it to another level. 6, adding an input knob like you have on the mix knob right up above it, I think would be great, because sometimes you just want to push that Preamp Spice mode. I think that is absolutely wonderful mode, but sometimes I want a little bit more from it. Same as the comp mode on that tube. I just want a little bit more, and sometimes maybe I don't want to mess with the input. I just want to push that mode. Same with the analog flavor, and same with the glue magic. So, but I know that the analog flavor, if I'm not mistaken, I don't think it has any saturation to it or anything like that. I think it's just more or less the Preamp Spice and the tube section. So I think that'd be a great idea, and again, helping it push it to another level. Now, these guys are great. They've been moving really fast. They've been implementing everything that I've pretty much sent to them. They're very open. They've been adding stuff from Gear Sluts is usually where I go, and they've been just like on it. So I want to send a big shout out to VoosteQ. Hope I'm saying that right. And MaterialComp, I just think is the next level of compression and saturation type plugins. It uses a low CPU, so you can use it on multiple channels. I absolutely adore when plugin designers make low CPU plugins so you can use multiple plugins. That always helps, and this is one of those plugins. I really appreciate it. So go to www.VoosteQ.com and download the demo. Let me know what you guys think. Also, leave some comments below. I'll have the VoosteQ guys come and check out the comments and also answer whatever questions you may have to this company and about this plugin or whatever plugin they may have in the future. Leave your comments below, and I wish you all the best.
Yeah, it's money over everything. I put that on everything. Yeah, we are. all-star fitted. This is all-star living.
I'm still mobbing in my trucks.
Yeah, it's money over everything. I put that on everything.
I'm still mobbing in my checks.
Yeah, we all-star fitted. This is all-star living.
I'm still mobbing in my trucks.
I've been mobbing my trucks. I've been mobbing in my trucks. I've been mobbing in mine. I've been mobbing in mine. Girl, I love my trucks. I love my trucks. Nothing can compare. I've been mobbing in mine.
Yeah, it's money over everything. I put that on
I'm
everything.
still mobbing in my trucks.
Yeah, we all-star fitted. This is all-star living.
I'm still mobbing in my trucks.
Yeah, it's money over everything. I put that on
I'm still
everything.
mobbing in my checks.
Yeah, we all-star fitted. This is all-star living.